Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Network. I'm Rick Anthony. Historically, putting two words together, physician and entrepreneur, wouldn't have made much sense. Most people wouldn't have thought of physicians as business people, as entrepreneurs. That's changing. Physicians increasingly, regardless of their discipline or their specialty, are looking outside of medicine, as well as within medicine, for other opportunities to make investments, to help other companies grow, to begin to plan for perhaps another stage of life, where in addition to practicing as healers and as specialists in their fields, can also be helpful to organizations, early stage companies and so on, that can benefit not only from their money, but for their expertise. Well, about 2 or 3 years ago, an organization was created called the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. Once again, the seeming incongruity of those two words, physician entrepreneur. One of the co-founders, Dr. Jeffrey Hausfeld, was in the area today to attend the meeting of the Villanova Entrepreneurs Network. He came up from Washington. So while in the neighborhood, I thought I would invite him to come on the Entrepreneurs Network, tell us about SOAP, the acronym for Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, what it is, why it was created, how it's growing rapidly around the country, and in fact is extending outside of the U.S. To Canada, and I'm sure won't be too long before it's in other parts of the world. And thank you for being with us this morning for the Villanova Entrepreneurs Network, where we had something in excess of 60 people. We teed up 5 early stage deals, 2 of which were healthcare related, all of which were very interesting. I think you'd agree. I hope you would agree.
Absolutely.
You are an anomaly. I think you are an anomaly. You had a very successful practice. You have been out of practice for the past few years and devoting yourself entirely now to entrepreneurial ventures. So you are a serial entrepreneur.
I am.
But let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
You're not from this area. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What was your specialty? And why did you leave it?
I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, you did?
I went to Brooklyn College. And from there went to Yale for medical school. Stayed at Yale for my internship in medicine, my internship in surgery, and then practiced otolaryngology and facial plastic surgery in Yale New Haven, and then left there after my residency and came down to Washington, D.C., basically to follow my older siblings, and set up a home and a practice in the suburbs of Washington and in downtown D.C.
You were a plastic surgeon?
I did facial plastic and reconstructive surgery and otolaryngology.
I couldn't even pronounce what you just said, but I would have thought that would be a very lucrative practice.
It was a very lucrative practice.
Then what happened?
After practicing, and I practiced very intensely, so 14-hour days were my common day. And it got to a point where my lease was coming up on my office, and my wife was my administrator. And she said, "Sweetheart, when the lease is up, I'm out of here." So I really said, who else is going to stay with me for 14, 15 hours a day? So I had to make a decision. And it really came at a time where I was ready to do something different. After you've done 10,000 procedures, doing 10,001 has only an incremental effect to a certain degree. But what this is about at this point in your life is about leaving a bigger footprint, changing something to the degree that I can't do it on a one-on-one basis, but on a larger scale.
But why not learn to play the saxophone or do a comedy routine? Why entrepreneurship?
Because I tried to live by the mantra of doing well by doing good.
All right.
So, and many of the companies that I own, manage, represent really try to fulfill that goal.
So it's really social entrepreneurialism?
Not totally social.
Double bottom line?
But it has to have more than just a monetary bottom line.
Can you give us some examples of the kinds of companies
Sure.
you've been invested in or are currently invested in?
One of the companies that I'm the president of is called Memory Care Communities of Illinois. We develop assisted living facilities for Alzheimer's and dementia care patients. And we have 2 facilities, one in Loves Park and one in Sycamore, Illinois. And we're planning to build another dozen of these throughout the Midwest they are beautiful facilities, not only because the physical space is beautiful, but because the culture of compassionate care instilled in our staff is such that the children of the patient who has Alzheimer's
Yes.
doesn't feel bad about mom or dad being there.
Why build a standalone facility? Why not build it within a CCRC?
The difficulty with building an Alzheimer's specialty unit
Yeah.
within another facility is that they're usually lockdown units.
Yes.
Alzheimer's patients have a tendency to roam.
Yes.
So what you're left with, and you don't like them mixing with the general population.
Yes, right.
Because the general older population looks at Alzheimer's patients with great fear and trepidation. So you have to separate them from the general population, which means they're in a small corridor.
Yes, I'm thinking about something I know of. You're absolutely right.
And here we have a 32,000 square foot facility
Wow.
with a beautiful courtyard and a very innovative town square concept. So we have, in the middle of our facility, we have a 2-story town square with a beauty salon, a petting zoo, a Five and Dime,
Really?
a Johnny Rocket so people can come in and have ice cream and whatever they want, a movie theater.
So you've created a little village.
We've created a village, and for these patients, it basically brings them back to a time where they can remember
Yeah.
things that they can do.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So it restores them to a point in time that allows them to live each day to the fullest.
And respects their dignity, their individual dignity.
That's the key.
Yes.
There's a lot of singing that goes on in our
Yeah.
facilities. There's a lot of dancing that goes on in our
Probably
facilities.
only the first verse, though. They don't remember the second
You'd
verse.
be surprised. You'd be surprised. They may not remember, who somebody is or what they had for
Yes.
breakfast. But if you ask people to stand up, and my favorite visual is having our group stand up and sing the Air Force anthem. I have 85-year-olds who
Yes.
stand up and know every word
Sure.
of that song, and it brings tears to my eyes every time it happens.
But isn't it true, or is it not, that those who have memory problems tend to remember things that happened a long time ago rather
Short-term-
than what happened yesterday?
Short-term
or
memory
last week?
loss is the first to go.
Yeah, right.
So their long-term memory is intact, and we try to really leverage that so that they can enjoy each day.
There was a story, Jeff, on the local television. I don't think it was a local news, but it was reported locally. Anyway, someone who had dementia or Alzheimer's was in a facility. No speaking, nothing, just, and went into an adjoining room and was giving comfort to another patient who had the same problem. And it was later discovered that these two men served in the military together, and one recognized the other. They were very close in the military.
Right.
They remembered nothing else. They didn't say a word to one another. He just tapped him on the shoulder, and they bonded again.
Right.
And they were watching out. Their beds are side by side. Beautiful story.
Right.
Beautiful
Those are the kind of things that you can see
Yeah.
in a facility that's dedicated for Alzheimer's and dementia care.
Now, you've mentioned to me that I asked you, I remember, why aren't you bringing that east? Because God knows we could use it here in the
And we
east.
can use it, and I always look for new opportunities. The issues here are the cost of land and the cost of employment.
Yes.
And in the Midwest, I can deliver a full service care for $4,200 a month. It will be double that
Yes.
on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's an impossible task, but it's something that I constantly am looking at opportunities.
And to what extent is technology? Does technology make this facility you just described possible? You must rely heavily on technology.
You know, you
for
rely-
monitoring and security, et cetera.
For all those things, it plays a role, but really, it is the people that make the place. So unlike a lot of other things in healthcare, that we can rely on healthcare
Yes.
IT to help us either be more efficient or faster or reduce our costs, this really involves one person's delivering care,
Yes.
compassionate care, to another person.
Okay, so my guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Hausfeld, who's telling me about the first of the series of investments and so on, entrepreneurial opportunities. Why did you decide to get into creating that kind of facility, and how did you fund it?
Okay, so you remember
Other docs?
No, you remember I told you about my son Joshua, who did his MBA with me in Hopkins.
You might share that with the audience. Yeah, that's a great story.
My now 32-year-old son came to me about 10 years ago and said, "Dad, I want to get an MBA." I said, "Good, go ahead. I'll pay for it. My parents paid for my medical school." So he went and he looked and he came back with different brochures and he said, "You know, they want me to go to work for 5 years first." I said, "That's good. Go to work. I'll still pay for it. Don't worry." He said, "But look at this program." And he shows me a program from Johns Hopkins, an MBA with a specialization in healthcare. I look at it and I say, "The heck with you, I should do this." And he said, "Let's do it together." So we did. For 4 years, we went to school together and got our MBAs
and graduated together.
And graduated
that's
together.
A wonderful story.
And he went on to work for a company called Love Funding, where he works now. And he originates and underwrites loans for senior healthcare facilities. So he was aware of a group of developers in the Midwest that were looking for someone to syndicate a deal for them, to help bring them private equity so they can build more than just one facility, but a dozen of these facilities. And that's where I came in.
That's terrific. We talk about being opportunistic. Okay, so that's one.
That's one.
What do you do on Saturdays?
Number two would be FMS Financial Solutions, which is a debt recovery company. Now, this company has been around for about 20 years, mostly dealing in multifamily housing debt collections. When they asked me to join them about 6 years ago, and they said, "Okay, how could you help us grow?" Because it was a relatively small company, not many employees, very little in revenue.
They sought you out?
It was a company that I had invested in, a financial services company and real estate company that I had invested in throughout many years. So they knew me. And they said, "You know, we know you're retiring from medicine. Come help us." I said, "Okay, let's give it a try." And I thought to myself, doctors and hospitals don't really have a trusted collection agency that they can use that understands them as physicians. Let's go after that market. So I created a specialization in debt collection for physicians and hospitals, and the company has grown tremendously over the last 6 years.
There was an unfulfilled need when
There was definitely an unfulfilled need because physicians, like you said, many times are not the best businessmen and weren't paying attention to their aged accounts receivable. So part of what I do is I educate them as to what the accounts receivable should look like, how to maximize the return on services they've already provided, and then how to go about collecting the debt from their patients without alienating that patient from their practice.
So they don't outsource their receivables to you?
They
collection?
No, they can have an internal billing company or an external billing company, but once it goes through the billing cycle of 30, 60, 90 days, if Mrs. Jones hasn't paid her $400 deductible, sending her a fourth letter is not going to get it done. But a letter coming from a collection agency saying, perhaps there's been a miscommunication. And this collection agency is run by a physician, so we understand that you don't want to disrupt that patient-physician relationship, but you do have a bill. How would you like to let us?
And you'll work out a payment plan?
And let's work out a payment plan.
Yeah. Okay. That's two.
That's two.
Is there a third?
Third is Next Gen Medical Systems.
Next Gen?
NEXGEN. Next Gen Medical Systems is a medical technology company that I'm an angel investor in this company, and I sit on the board of directors of the company, and I'm now acting chief medical officer of the neurosurgical division of Next Gen Medical Systems. It's a very interesting company, run by really smart people that I have great respect for.
Where's it located?
It's located in Melbourne, Florida, but we have people in the Baltimore area that are involved with us, people in Sacramento, people in Reno, really a top-notch group of physicians, PhDs, neurosurgeons that understand this space and understand the unmet need. So one of the platforms that we have is a device to remove blood clots. You would think that there are devices out there.
Yes.
And there are. The problem with the devices that are out there is that they take too long to use and they cause damage to the vessel wall, which causes its own problems after you have removed a clot. Here, they have devised this snare-like apparatus that looks like a python as it goes around the clot, and then grabs
Pulls
the
it out?
clot in what looks like a Chinese finger torture
Yes,
trap
yes, yes.
that
Like
goes around it and then squeezes it without damaging the vessel wall and removes the clot in half the time.
So it's a catheter with some kind
A
of...
catheter that you manipulate outside the body
Right.
that forms coils around the clot that can remove both hard and soft clots from peripheral vessels
Right.
as well as vessels going into your brain for strokes.
Because the danger is always that a little piece will break off, right?
Correct. So it has a shield that you can have so the piece won't break off. If it does, it'll be caught. And you can manipulate the nitinol wires so that it catches the clot, encapsulates it, and removes it.
Now, that kind of technology requires FDA,
Correct.
which takes forever and is very expensive.
And requires the knowledge of people who have gone through
Yes.
that process.
Right.
And that's part of what SOAP does, is that we try to educate physicians who have ideas based on their knowledge of unmet needs,
SOAP, the acronym for
Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, understand just what is involved in bringing an idea to market. So the thrombectomy device is one platform. The neurosurgical devices are very exciting because we have the only FDA-approved catheters that can instill and remove materials from the brain. So now
Really?
we're working with researchers from NIH, University of Washington in Seattle, University of California, to look at how we can best deliver materials for either tumors or neurodegenerative diseases, and whether we're going to infuse proteins or viruses. Now we're even working with people that are infusing stem cells for a variety of neurodegenerative diseases.
So does NextGen license this technology, or do you develop it yourself?
We develop it ourselves.
You do?
Yes.
Wow. That's impressive stuff.
Very exciting.
Is there a
and
third platform? You mentioned two platforms.
those are the two platforms that we're actively
Okay.
working on now.
All right. And they're located in Florida.
In Melbourne, Florida is our R&D plant.
And what's the market for their devices?
Oh, hundreds of millions of dollars for each of those platforms
In just U.S. or worldwide?
in U.S.
U.S. only. Okay. And what's your involvement with that? You're an investor.
I'm an investor, and we're trying to raise additional funds for the next round that we need for ramping up clinical trials and manufacturing.
In that particular case, that's a good example. Obviously, very bright people who saw a need and were doing their very best to satisfy the need. Did they have the kind of business acumen that was necessary to take that company, that venture, to the next step? Or is that when they reached to you and others like you to come in and join them?
Well, they did both, because one of the initial investors is another physician MBA, and that's how I was introduced to the company, was through an alumnus of the Carey School of Business at Hopkins, who runs a venture capital firm dedicated to life sciences. And he was one of the original investors and one of the original people that did his due diligence on this company. And it was through Dr. Brownstein and his firm, Life Tech, that I was introduced to the company.
All right, that's three.
That's
Is
three.
there a fourth?
There are three companies that I help consult with because I think they have very disruptive technologies that I think will be very key in changing some of the ways that we do business as physicians. One is a company called Coronet Solutions, and it allows patients to hold your personal health record on your mobile device.
That's not new,
It is new
is it?
because they have a patent that allows for this technology to exist.
Right.
Right now, when you need your medical records, what do you have to do?
What I do is I've done it. I put it all on one sheet, all my records.
Your records.
I have to go to the physician
You have
and
to go to
sign
the
all
record.
kinds of forms so they can release them.
Correct.
Right.
So what we're saying is that now that we are mandating the use of electronic health records, why shouldn't that patient not have to, why should the patient have to go to the doctor's office and go through this rigmarole of waiting for photocopies to be done, paying for photocopies? Why can't we have it so that an application will bring down that information electronically so that that patient can store it on their phone and share it with whatever doctor they want to share it with?
I thought IBM had developed a platform similar to that anyway a few years ago.
Not that we know of.
No?
The only platform that's similar is the VA has something called the Blue Button Initiative, but that just produces a text file. And in a text file, it is editable. So a patient can get his personal record, but also can change it. And as a physician,
Not
I
good.
can't trust that
Right,
record.
right.
So I need something that is read-only, uneditable, and that I know comes from a trusted source, which is the electronic health record of your physician.
Okay. Next.
Good
These
Chime.
are fascinating. Just keep going.
Good Chime is a company out of
Good Chime.
Good Chime, and it's www.goodchime.com.
Yeah.
Is a company out of McLean, Virginia, run by a physician MBA, another Carey Business School alumnus, Dr. Sridhar Puttaratsu, and he has created a platform for health and wellness that is celebrity-driven challenges. Now, Rick, you and I are a little seasoned and may look at this and say,
No, ripe in my case.
and may look at this and say, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Brent Michaels has 1 million Twitter followers. He has diabetes. If he says to his Twitter followers, okay, guys, I'm going to create a challenge. I want all of us to reduce our hemoglobin A1C by 5% in the next month. Who's with me? He'll get 10,000 people to follow him. And Good Chime provides the platform for that to happen.
Where's the revenue in that internet play?
The revenue comes from the sale of merchandise related to that disease process.
Okay.
So whether it's healthy foods that they can eat or recipes or books related to diabetes, and the data that they receive from
they mine the data?
They do data mining because that's where this expertise comes from a previous company that the physician was involved with.
And how many celebrities are
They have 60 celebrities now.
60?
60.
All
Check
of
it
them
out.
have their own networks.
All of them have their own networks. Matthew McConaughey has that six-pack. He has people trying to get that six-pack. And it's great because that, again, allows you to get away from the model of one patient, one doctor, fee-for-service.
Yeah.
We can reach millions of people who can improve their health, improve their lifestyles, reduce healthcare expenditures, and have better outcomes.
So if you were a primary physician, is this a benefit that you might want to provide to your patients?
You might want to tell your patients
a membership
to
or
look at
something?
goodchime.com for a challenge that they could take, and eventually we're going to integrate the physician community so that they can have their own challenges and their own content and their own ability to monitor these patients.
Okay. That would include nutrition, physical activity, prevention.
Absolutely.
That's very interesting. I want to know more about that one.
Okay.
There's one more.
Third one is called Group MD.
Group MD.
Group MD. And this is a relatively, it's a new company. It's not telemedicine, but we have a problem. And the problem today is that residents like to text each other. They go around the hospital texting each other all the time. It's the culture they grew up in. And even physicians who are in their 40s and 50s are texting and emailing on their devices.
Yes.
Those are all HIPAA non-compliant acts because it is not a secured message. And as much as hospital administrators tell their docs, don't do that. It really is not something that is, we're going to get sued at some point.
Regardless of the content?
Regardless if it's a content related to personal health information.
Okay.
They will get sued, and a group in Arizona just got sued $100,000 for texting about Mrs. Jones who needed a cardiac cath, and this was a group of 4 cardiologists who were just doing business.
Yeah.
So if that's occurring, there is an unmet need there. So this platform allows physicians to communicate with each other either via email or texting, which is encrypted and compliant with the HIPAA regulations.
Each one of these is fascinating. And each one of them represents wonderful niche opportunities.
Correct.
Somebody spotted an unfilled need and came up with a solution.
Right. So in Group MD, I can have a group. So if I'm a cardiac surgeon and I know that I have 10 people on my operating team, I can say one text to my operating room team, meet me in the operating room for Mrs. Smith, 3 o'clock, aortic valve replacement, and they get the message. So
SOAP. Again, the acronym for Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, which is about to form a Philadelphia chapter.
Very happy that we are.
And the one in New York.
We have one in New York. We have one coming up in Toronto. Sacramento.
But the one in New York is going to be headed up by Dr. Stephen Marin, who was from the Philadelphia area.
Correct.
Went back to Manhattan. So one of the mission of SOAP is to provide to any number of physicians the same vantage point you have, you and others like you,
Right.
on deal flow, opportunities, needs,
Obstacles.
who's doing what, obstacles.
And how to navigate these very difficult waters.
And how
As you said, physicians by nature are not good businessmen.
Yeah.
Our brains are really geared toward caring for people.
Yes.
But so if we can teach them the basics
Right.
of good business acumen and good understanding of the regulatory process and the funding process and the marketing process and the distribution and how to value human capital, we've done a great thing.
How do you do that?
Through educational events.
Seminars, workshops?
Workshops, seminars that we have in each of our locations throughout the country, and webinars that we have on our online on what's called SOAP-U.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. But the website is soapnet.org.
That's right. It's
And
soapnet.org.
You are a 501c3.
Correct. We're getting that from the IRS now.
Right. Okay. And you have 4,000 members now?
On LinkedIn, we have about 4,000 members.
On LinkedIn, you have 4,000 members. What is a member?
A member is someone who has an interest, who has joined one of the
But
LinkedIn
not
groups
a
on SOAP.
dues-paying member.
Not necessarily a dues-paying member, because there are two structures. You can either join and not pay any dues and just partake in the educational events, or there's a premium member for both associates and healthcare providers that have a higher profile and get certain privileges.
But at a nominal fee.
$300 to $500.
Yeah, okay. And I think you said that membership is open to anyone in healthcare, not just doctors.
That is correct. It's called SOAP because it's an easy acronym.
Yes.
And it was started by physicians.
Okay.
But we welcome nurses and any healthcare provider.
You are one of the three co-founders.
That is correct.
How did it happen?
There are three of us that had a penchant for business.
But you were dispersed.
We were dispersed, but we met once a year. We met once a year. One's in Denver, one's in New York, and I'm in Washington, D.C. But we met once a year at the American Academy of Otolaryngology convention. And one year we said, okay, why don't we have a breakfast meeting for people like us who are interested in some sort of business and who want to innovate something that we've thought of. Whether it's a medical service, whether it's a device, whether it's a diagnostic, whether it's a new drug. So we had breakfast meetings at these annual meetings, and lo and behold, at 7 o'clock in the morning, we had a room filled with people.
Really?
And we said, I think we have something.
There's a pony in there somewhere, yeah.
And that's when we brought it out of the ENT community to the greater medical community.
And what's your goal? What's the objective?
The objective is
international?
We are international in that we have a chapter in Lisbon, Portugal. We're starting one in London, and we have interest now for Greece,
Really?
as well as Iraq.
Wow.
So there are physician entrepreneurs all over the world.
And the membership, the physician membership, cuts across all specialties?
Every specialty. Not only surgeons who like to play with things and create devices, but a lot of internal medicine people, pediatricians, anesthesiologists, who have ideas and are using healthcare IT to drive their ideas.
You are a 501c3, you are a nonprofit organization, therefore you can't get involved in funding any of these deals.
That's correct. We don't fund them, but we try to network with people who can fund them so that they can start this company and get some legs off the ground.
Point being, as in our case, SOAP, the Philadelphia chapter of SOAP, Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, will be affiliated with the Villanova Entrepreneurs Network, which is not a fund, it's a venue, but we could handle some of the deal flow that you will begin to experience here in the Philadelphia market and help them get funding.
Correct.
Help the entrepreneurs get funding.
And we create a very nice ecosystem by being able to do that.
You're also accommodating physicians who are interested in investing, most of whom are passive investors. That is, they write a check, they don't necessarily follow it.
Again, don't paint us with that broad brush. There are physicians that are very active investors and physicians that are not. So it really will depend on the deal and the amount of money and the time of their life.
How many practicing physicians are there in the country?
Between 600,000 and 700,000.
And dwindling?
And dwindling, and 1 out of every 6 doctors now is being employed by a hospital. And that number is expected to grow significantly over the next 10 years.
Regardless of who wins.
Correct.
We will have healthcare reform
Yes.
one way or another,
Yes.
because we need
So
it.
a lot of those physicians who are out there don't have a technology transfer office they can go to. That's when they come to SOAP.
The control room is telling me we've run out of time, and this has been fascinating. I look forward to having an affiliation with the Philadelphia chapter and hope to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very much for being here.
A pleasure.
Until next time, this is the Entrepreneurs Network. I am Rick Anthony. Take very good care of yourself. The doctor said so.